In a word, the Braves were spent. 13 straight games without an off day, culminating in dropping a series to the worst team in baseball. And now the Braves have to turn their sights to one of the major's biggest surprises. This is BPTV. Cory McCartney and Grant McAuley with you as always. And Grant, as Atlanta begins a series versus the Diamondbacks, it does so 10 games above 500. Keep in mind, a year ago, they were 4 games below 500 when the calendar hit June, but an uneven May when the Braves went 15-14 can cloud that perspective.
Yeah, it really can, because the Braves got off to such a hot start this year, and you felt like, okay, well, maybe they're reversing the script from a year ago, or flipping the script, I guess, as the saying goes, from 2022, where they started off just so sluggishly, couldn't find their way to 500, and definitely couldn't get above it and stay above it for very long. Then all of a sudden, you got to the end of the month of May, flip the calendar to June, a 14-game winning streak really changed everybody's perspective a season ago. And while you can't expect to go on that kind of run every single year, it would certainly be nice. I think this Braves club is capable of playing better than it did in the month of May. If I'm looking at series that stand out, clearly closing out by losing 2 out of 3 to the Oakland Athletics, not ideal. The series in Toronto, I think, also kind of paints a negative picture of the month, because that was one that felt like some missed opportunities, certainly in the finale of that one, and just the Braves not really playing up to their capabilities. But there were some highlights, I think, in some of the series matchups that you saw, whether it was taking 2 out of 3 from the Orioles, beating up a little bit on the Mariners, and kind of getting through that American League gauntlet and feeling like at least you're kind of on equal footing with some of these clubs. But I think the Braves know, and I talked to Matt Olson a little bit on the recent homestand, they haven't gotten hot yet. They haven't played their best baseball. And as you and I both know, Corey, there's an awful lot of baseball to be played. And I think 2022 certainly showed us that.
Yeah, the Braves dropped 4 of their last 6 games, 12 of the last 20. Despite that, they were tied for 7th in F4 in May, hit the 2nd most home runs in the majors in the month, had the 6th best rotation in F4, and even that despite the fact of losses of Max Fried and Kyle Wright. Now, the bullpen, 18th in F4, 17th in ERA, 2/3 of the outfield, Michael Harris II, Eddie Rosario, were respectively 48 and 71 weighted run created plus in the month. Even with Acuna's heroics, the Braves outfield ranked 21st in F4, hit 5% below league average. But Sean Murphy kept breaking 153 WRC plus in the month. Acuna was at 147. Marcell Ozuna topped them all at 159. Bryce Elder had a paltry 1.72 ERA in 6 May starts. Nobody in the majors struck out more batters than Spencer Strider did with 57. And bearing the lead here, we saw the long-awaited return of Michael Soroka.
Yeah, all of these are things that were kind of part of the mixed bag, I guess, for the Braves. But I do think that there was at least slightly more good than bad. And I don't just say that because 15 is slightly more than 14 in terms of wins and losses for the month. But it did feel a lot like a gauntlet, because think about this. They played 29 games in the month of May. They're 31 days. You do the math. The Braves were very busy. They weren't enjoying a whole bunch of off days throughout this gauntlet, because not only was it 13 straight to close the month, but there was also a string of, I believe, 17 consecutive games scheduled anyway. There was some rain, I guess, in New York that might have changed the perspective a little bit. But either way, I think that May was a very busy month for this Braves team. You did see Ronald Acuna Jr. continue to make an MVP case. The resurgence of Marcell Ozuna, that's one of the biggest stories of the season for the Braves, because he flipped a switch that made him go from being a pitcher batting in the month of April to an actual designated hitter, which is certainly helpful for this club. When you mention the struggles of Michael Harris, who now is, I think, healthy back on the field, that should change, of course, correct itself. Eddie Rosario, I think, has had some moments for this club, but it's not really the offense that you worry about from the 30,000-foot view. But as you got to the end of the month, it just felt like this was a team that was struggling for just that one more hit or that one more productive out in order to turn an inning in which they may have scored a run or had an opportunity to score a run into actual runs scored. So even though they have a great offense, I feel like there's maybe a little bit of a level up that they could find at some point throughout the course of June and beyond. But yeah, the return of Michael Soroka, to kind of wrap up my thoughts on the month of May, that's a highlight we've been looking forward to for nearly 3 years. It's been the culmination of a long road back. But I mean, if you talk to Soroka, he may be happy to put the comeback part of his story behind him, but he wants to write a very fun chapter for the 2023 season now that he is finally back in the big leagues, back in Atlanta's rotation. And I thought looking pretty good in his first outing in nearly 3 years.
Yeah, he got 11 swings and misses on his 83 pitches against the A's, 15 called strikes. He allowed 4 runs on 5 hits with 3 strikeouts and a pair of walks. Certainly not the results that he was looking for, especially against a bad Oakland lineup. But, you know, obviously the mere fact that he was back on a big league mound, it did not always seem a given. It was one start But it's worth noting that we saw an increased velo from Soroka, averaged 93.3 on his four-seam, topped out at 95.7. That was higher than any of his outings from his brief 2020 before his first Achilles injury. You have to go a few starts back into 2019 to find the last time that he topped out at higher than 95.7. So given the continued absences of Fried and Wright, Grant, there may not be a more compelling story on this team than what Soroka is able to give this rotation going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be important because you've got a few different stories that are, I think, very good ones in this Braves rotation, despite the fact that you're down Max Fried, that you're down Kyle Wright. I want to start with Bryce Elder because, as I've said many times over the last couple of weeks, you can't call him an unsung hero for the Braves anymore because we're recognizing what this guy's doing every fifth day. We are, in fact, singing his praises, and he is heading into the month of June, the Major League's ERA leader, which is not a storyline or a place on my bingo card that I thought that I would be talking about as we roll into the third month of the season, but here we are. And you've also seen Jared Schuster, I think, give the Braves enough to kind of stabilize one of those two spots, but you still had the big question. And if you needed some kind of clarity, some kind of stability, consistency, whatever words you want to call it, to get away from those bullpen games, and then you add in the fact that, hey, it's a guy that was your opening day starter in 2020, an all-star in 2019, runner-up and rookie of the year. I mean, the praise for Soroka was all there. Unfortunately, he had to put his career on hold because of injuries for all this time. But I still think, and not just based on the fastball velocity, but he had the full pitch mix working. I feel like maybe made a mistake with one changeup in that game that really cost him with that 3-run homer. Otherwise, I mean, going back out there, completing a scoreless sixth inning, there were a lot of different boxes that were checked in that comeback for Michael. I think once he got over the, the emotional weight that he was carrying for a very long time, now he gets to go back out there this weekend against Arizona. Then he gets to have that home debut at some point on the next homestand. That's what we're all looking forward to. There's a lot going right in this rotation, despite the fact you're missing a couple of guys. Charlie Morton, I think, has been more than serviceable. Spencer Strider is Spencer Strider. This is a team, again, that I feel like as they get healthy and as they roll into the summer months, and we just look historically over the last couple of years, have started to play a better brand of baseball than they typically do in April and May. We just get to say that this year with a team that was somehow 10 games over 500, despite a slew of injuries, some inconsistency, and a really challenging month in May that we've talked about quite a bit here on this show.
As the great Sarah Langs notes, since 1996, 58% of the teams that have won the World Series had at least a share of their division lead on June 1st. So historically speaking, the Braves couldn't be in better shape, even if May did end with a sour taste in their mouth. It was, of course, last June when they really kicked things into high gear, going 21-6, including a 14-game winning streak. Just saying the potential of history repeating itself is difficult. 4 of their opponents this month were in the postseason in 2022. 5 of the 6 series come against teams that are either first or second place in their division. And this month begins with the 3 games against the Diamondbacks, co-leaders in the NL West, along with the Dodgers. Charlie Morton goes Friday against Merrill Kelly, followed by Spencer Strider and Ryan Nelson on Saturday, and the aforementioned Michael Soroka and Zach Gallen on Sunday. At least statistically, Soroka facing a much stiffer test in his second start. Arizona 7th in F4, 6th in runs scored, and a few teams have taken bigger advantage of the new era of base running. They're 2nd in the NL in steals. I know we spent a lot of time on Michael Soroka so far, but what are your expectations for him in start number 2?
Well, I think just being comfortable and not having to have all the feelings of this is the first time in a long time that I'm out here. Can I still do any of the questions that would have been in the back of your mind? I think he's probably already answered a lot of those and throughout some of his minor league starts and work getting back. It's not like he didn't know what he's capable of. He's just been looking forward to that opportunity to get back out and show that he could do it at the big league level. I know in chatting with Brian Snitker on the recent homestand, and before the move to bring Soroka back up, he said, look, we just need to have him ready to cover the innings, throw 100 pitches. And that's something he was able to do or close to it in Gwinnett before the Braves made that decision. And you do line him up with the Arizona is going to be challenging. They are a good club. They've got a lot of, I think, speed merchants, as you mentioned, on this team. They're on the bases really well. They're just playing overall a very good brand of baseball this year. And surprisingly so, just based on how big of a step they've taken forward in just 1 year's time. But then you start to break it apart, look at all the pieces and the reasons why. You can understand that this is a club that I think is going to have some staying power, at the very least, in the wild card picture in the expanded playoffs. Arizona is going to be, I think, a team to be reckoned with throughout the summer. Zach Gallen being a Cy Young Award contender this year, that's going to be an interesting matchup for Soroka, who has been looked upon in the past as one of the Braves' best starting pitchers. I hate to heap expectations on him here early, but I also think it's probably fun to at least challenge yourself in that way. I know a lot of starters don't look at their mound opponent and think, all right, well, I need to match that guy pitch for pitch, 0 for 0. It's more about executing your game plan. But from the outside perspective or the game story perspective, it's definitely fascinating to see Soroka matched up against one of the better pitchers in the National League, just to maybe test his mettle a little bit. Not that he needs, I think, any more motivation to get out there, get those outs, and continue to write his comeback story, which people, again, have been very, very much looking forward to.
Well, when he's at his best, he's a ground ball pitcher, and the Diamondbacks have the second highest ground ball rate in the majors. So this may just be exactly what he needs to put a strong start together. Don't forget, we've always got you covered here on BPTV. So be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell a friend to keep this community growing. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves Country.